Announcement that those businesses could reopen came, of course, from Governor Greg Abbott yesterday, and some businesses that were hoping to make the list did not. Governor Abbott joins us live now from our state capitol in Austin. Governor, we do thank you for your time, and we want to get right to it because I'm sure you have seen the reporting by the Texas Tribune that says that you admitted in a private call with lawmakers that reopening our state would lead to an increase in coronavirus cases. But we've been hearing you say the increase will be due to more testing. So what would you like Houstonians to know about that tonight?
Well, what was so-called stated in that private conversation is something that I've stated publicly dozens of times, and where I got that information is public statements that have been made by doctors repeatedly. So all I'm talking about is the known scientific information, and that is that when you do go about the process of opening up, obviously it's going to lead to more interactions with people. One way that infectious diseases transmit is through interactions with other people. And so that's what you call common sense. Equally common sense that we now know, and that is that we can reduce the transmission of COVID-19 the more that we practice these safe practices of doing things like wearing masks, washing your hands, safe distancing practices, so that we can continue to slow the growth of the coronavirus, just like what we've seen in Houston, Texas, which is one of the reasons why we are able to open up more, because people in Houston have done such a good job. The number has slowed so much in Houston. That's why we are proud that we are going to have people involved in barber shops, hair salons, nail salons. They're going to be open up on Friday before Mother's Day and give people a chance to get a haircut or a hairstyling.
As a woman and a mother, the timing is impeccable, so thank you. But let's talk about the tough task that you have in determining who opens and when. You just gave us the list of who's going to be opening by Friday, and that is music to a lot of people's ears, except, of course, for bar owners. We've heard a lot from them. They're frustrated. Can you talk directly to them as to why they have to wait when their restaurant counterparts can open with a limited number of patrons?
Hey, listen, it's frustrating for any business owner, whether it be bar owner or anybody else who has not yet been able to open up, because they have bills to pay. They have employees they need to pay. They have all these obligations, and they're losing their business as we speak. And hence, we are working today, and we're working every day on the strategies that will allow them to open up. Here's the difference between bars and restaurants. One thing about bars is if they are able to seat people separately and spaced away from each other, like is done in restaurants right now, that could be a strategy that could work. I bet you and your audience are familiar with some bars that are relatively small, where people are packed in. Kind of one of the purposes of a bar is to bring a lot of people close together, congregate closely, to intermingle. And it's that intermingling in a closed space that leads to the transmission of infectious diseases like COVID-19. Obviously, you don't want people in bars having to wear masks and stuff like that. Like right now, when you go out to dinner at a restaurant, because restaurants are now open, when you're sitting down eating in a restaurant, you don't have to wear a mask, because obviously you need to be putting food in your mouth. And just like you want to be being able to sip on a drink at a bar, there are complexities that we just need to visit with the bar owners to figure out a way they will be able to open up while also ensuring they're not promoting the transmission of COVID-19.
Governor, I'd like to talk to you about this salon owner up in Dallas who was arrested and sent to jail for violating your executive order. Now, you put out a statement along with the Texas Attorney General asking that she be released. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has even offered to pay her fines. Now, if I'm a business owner and I'm not allowed to open yet, and I'm hearing this, what's stopping me from opening early?
So here's the deal that I made clear with regard to Harris County, Texas, a week ago. And that is, we all urge people to wear masks. Even though wearing a mask is the right thing to do, I pointed out that the attempt in Harris County to either impose fines or to put people in jail for not wearing a mask is the wrong thing. And let me tell you why. And that's because these aren't like criminal laws that exist. If you go rob someone, you get put in jail. These are laws intended to maintain control during a pandemic. And as a result, we need to be very careful that we're not infringing upon people's individual liberties. As a result, I believe it is wrong to arrest someone and put them in jail, especially in a county like Dallas County, where they have articulated by their district attorney they will not arrest anybody and put them in jail if they steal something valued at $750 or less. And while they may be letting people out of jail because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's absurd that they would decide to put somebody in jail who was simply trying to open up their business.
Yeah, a lot of questions about logic and reasoning as we try to navigate our way through this. And as we move forward and we now have this slow sort of reopening of business as usual, a lot of people in the community might be worried about another surge in COVID-19, especially in the summer as more businesses start to reopen. Is there any way that you can maybe look forward and express what the next steps would be should that happen? And would it even include closing businesses again?
Sure. Let me give you several next steps. The first next step we're involved in right now, and that is as we begin to open up, we've created these surge teams that respond to any flare-ups in COVID-19. There's a flare-up in the Panhandle right now because of a meat packing plant. There are flare-ups in some areas where there are jails and flare-ups in some areas where there is an outbreak at a nursing home. So we put these surge teams in. We do massive testing. We do isolation to prevent those who test positive from being able to transmit the disease to others. And basically, we corral the coronavirus in those areas. And because we knew this was to be expected, we had these surge teams already set up, capable of responding to any outbreak of COVID-19. That's the kind of thing that could happen during the next few months over the course of the summertime. You hear about a second phase. The real second phase people talk about is what could happen in the fall or winter when the regular flu season comes back and there will be more people hospitalized from the flu, not COVID, but from the flu. Remember, there are so many people hospitalized and who lose their lives every year just because of the common flu. And when you add that to what could be additional patients related to COVID-19, that's something we need to get prepared for, and we're doing it in two ways. One, we are beginning to stockpile PPE to make sure we will have adequate supplies to respond to the challenges of COVID-19. But two, we've already shown in Texas, better than any other state, that we're able to have the supply of hospital beds and hospital ventilators and things like that to make sure that anybody who does get ill will be able to be taken care of.
Governor, we always appreciate having you in this newscast and really spelling things out to our viewers. It's an incredible help. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, thank you so much.
Thank you all.